The Contessa di Quagni asks Chénier to contribute a poem to liven up the party, which he declines. Their conversation intrigues Maddalena, who's nearby with her friends. She decides to try her luck with Chénier. Chénier turns her down, claiming that his inspiration is as unpredictable as love. His response results in laughter from Maddalena and her friends. Apparently, Maddalena and her friends had made a bet that she could coax a poetic word out of Chénier's mouth. That word is love. She taunts Chénier, implying that his inspiration is nothing special if the poetic words she furnishes him are words that anybody could say without inspiration. Mortally offended, Chénier answers with the offer of a spontaneous poetry recital where he'll demonstrate his gift for poetry. This poetry recital is part of the first great showpiece in this opera, known as the Improvviso, because of how it starts out as a poem composed by the title role on the spot. If you still remember the poetry we were once made to study in school, which doesn't necessarily have to be in English, a poem is like one or more pictures represented in verse. The first part of the Improvviso is something like that. There are a series of images which the tenor performing the showpiece will use his voice to evoke. I'll be using these images to show you how you can enjoy this aria. For the first image, I want you to imagine a field. This is a field that's covered with lush vegetation. It can be flowers, it can be crops. When you look at this field, the field seems to stretch into the horizon. From the point you're at, you can't see where the field ends. Above the field is a sky of the clearest, purest blue. The sun that's shining upon this field is not the raging sun of today's summer, but the genial sun of the summer of decades before. A sun that blankets the earth rather than scorching it. When the music of the Improvviso starts playing, you feel that a bright sky hangs over you. When the tenor singing the role of Chénier sings the first section of the Improvviso, it's as though his voice is directing you to look beyond you. As he sings, the poetry of his singing seems to be sowing seeds that burst into blooming flowers or ripening crops ahead of you. His voice seems like it's rolling a green or yellow carpet before you, a carpet that looks like a fertile field. You feel that his voice will gradually rise towards the end, rolling that carpet faster and faster until it goes out of your sight. I'll let you experience this when we'll now hear the tenor playing the role of Chénier in this performance sing this section.
L'azzurro spazio guardai profondo e ai prati colmi di fiore io pedalo il sole e folgorava il mondo pare alla terra un'immane di scrigno il firmamento.
Jose Carreras is the tenor for our performance. Did you hear how the sentences he sings seem to travel in a straight line, one after the other? Did you also hear how the syllables of each sentence he sings seem to be joined together? That ability to join the syllables in each sentence together such that the sentence seems to flow is known as legato. Carreras' ability to keep his sentences flowing smoothly is a sign of his technical skill. After hearing this first section, we'll move on to the second section, which brings another image to mind. For this second image, we are still on that field. I want you to imagine that you're lying down on that field of abundance. It's like a bed of flowers or crops. You can feel them stroking your back lightly. When you take a deep breath, you inhale the aroma of the vegetation around you. This spot is your little paradise on this earth. You're so glad to be here that a whirlpool of delight begins to take shape in your heart. It quickly gathers momentum until it overpowers you to the point you want to squeal out in joy. Life cannot be happier at that moment. When you listen to the background music of the second section, it will sound like it's tenderly rippling along. Your senses will feel as though they are being massaged. The second image Chénier is calling to our minds is a truly beautiful scene. It can already stir up such emotion in us, the audience, let alone him, the poet. Just like how we perceive that whirlpool of delight taking shape in our hearts as we listen to Chénier sing, we can perceive the emotion building up in the tenor playing the role until it reaches the point where he is so overwhelmed that he can't help releasing that pent-up emotion in a dramatic outburst. This outburst will occur at the words Tamo. After that point, the tenor will keep that emotional high for a while before he gently climbs down for the next section. We'll now hear Carrera sing the second section so you can undergo these sensations.
alla terra, alla mia fronte, veniva una carezza viva, un bacio, grida hai vinto, amore, amo, che mi baci divinamente bella, oh patria mia.
Carreras is a lyric tenor, so he was well able to manage the more lyrical passages, the parts which required graceful singing as we heard earlier. However, when it came to the more dramatic part, that part where he had to give that outburst, he was only able to display a moderate amount of vocal horsepower. His voice did leave some ring in our ears, but that ring only lasted long enough to have a fleeting impact on us. If you heard the dramatic tenors Mario Del Monaco and Franco Corelli in our previous episodes, you will know that the voices of true dramatic tenors have significantly more penetrative power. The ring their voices leave lasts long enough to produce a physical reaction in us. From this comparison, it's apparent that Carreras might seem underpowered in the more dramatic passages. As a lead tenor role which has both lyrical and dramatic passages, Chénier is a spinto role which is a combination of the outstanding qualities of lyric and dramatic tenors. Hence, by doing well in the lyrical passages and getting by in the dramatic passages, Carrera's performance can be regarded as competent here nonetheless. The composer Umberto Giordano has a style which is rather different from the other composers whose music we've heard in previous episodes. Giordano's best melodies are quite short. Usually, they will be at the beginning of a section of a musical highlight or at some point in the musical highlight when its level of emotion becomes so intense that it spills over in the form of an outburst. And when the melodies end, the singers in the various highlights will sing those running sentences until the next section or the point when the singer's character is moved to make his or her outburst. We will hear that these sentences are sung in a way that sounds like singing but doesn't quite sound like it either. This style of singing is known as parlando. You can understand it as melodic declamation, or talking in a sing-song way, or declaimed melody, or singing where the singer uses a certain tone, inflections, and or stresses in their singing to such an extent that their singing can come across as uttering. The melodies are where Giordano differs from the other composers whose music we've heard in previous episodes. For these composers like Verdi and Puccini, the melody is shaped by the rhythm of the singing, while the orchestral accompaniment is there to set the atmosphere. However, for Giordano's case, the melody is shaped by the orchestra instead on top of the usual role it fulfills. This explains why the tunes we heard during the two sections of the Improvviso just now seem to come from the orchestra rather than the singers. And now, let's return to the Improvviso. The first part of the Improvviso, the spontaneous poetry recital we listened to just now, has 4 sections. We've already heard the first 2 sections. The last 2 sections are similar, so it's only necessary to present one of them. Unlike the first 2 sections, which present idealized images of the countryside, that his noble audience likes to see as their unspoiled retreat. These two sections are presenting raw images of what the countryside is really like. In the last section, which we'll be listening to, Chénier sings about the farmer flinging vulgarities at Mother Nature for not producing enough for him to feed his family on, and the world around him for condemning his children to suffer as he does. Towards the end, the part about the world condemning the farmer's children, Chénier starts to feel so indignant that his singing becomes agitated. This indignation grows quickly to the point his final words are almost spat out. If not, Chénier would have choked on them. Let's hear it for ourselves.
Arcai degli abiti di ruscia, con uomini camminiava bestiariato la suora, venerai appena sazia, e contro a Dio scagliava, e contro gli uomini le lacrime dei figli.
During the excerpt I just played, did you notice the way Kaviraj was singing? You can't really make out a tune from the way he was singing just now. There was some emphasis or even force in certain areas that disrupts any tune that could be produced with the lyrics. It doesn't really sound like singing, but at the same time, you can't really say it's talking either. The words Kaviraj was uttering flows too smoothly to sound like speaking. What Kaviraj was doing in that excerpt is an example of Palando. Palando is declaimed melody or melodic declamation. From the word declamation, you can infer that Palando would be of greater advantage to a dramatic tenor. A dramatic tenor's voice will have the necessary weight to make the words sing deeper, deep enough to drive home their meaning, such that even a listener who doesn't understand Italian can tell that there's something to those words. There's another noteworthy thing during the excerpt. Did you also notice that the nobles at the party all turned their backs on Chénier? These nobles are the class of people responsible for the farmers' suffering due to their wicked rents and tolls. Nobody likes being confronted with the uncomfortable truth of their ugly selves. Not that Chénier particularly cares. He was already quite antisocial during the party, as we have seen. He didn't really approve their ways. However, there was one person whom he saw in a different light. This leads us to the second part of the Improvviso. In the second part of the Improvviso, it turns out that person was Maddalena. Chénier first sings that he saw something in her eyes which differentiated her from the others at the party, the ability to feel pity. In the upcoming excerpt, which comes right after, he sings that that expression in her eyes made him feel that she possesses such beauty that crowns her above everybody else. However, her flippant taunting has proven this to be a mirage that dismayed him. Now we shall hear it. Listen to how the orchestral music seems to bloom at its opening, the part where Chénier sings about Maddalena's beauty, and how it wanes at its end, the part where Chénier sings about his disillusionment. If you ask me, as much as I do enjoy Kaviraj's refined singing in the excerpt we've just heard, I think it's the blooming orchestral accompaniment that delights me more. The next excerpt from the Improvviso we'll be listening to, its closing section will be different. Here is the singer who will get to shine. In this excerpt, Chénier delivers his comeback in response to Maddalena's frivolous comments about love. During the excerpt, you hear two high notes. Both are on the word amor, the Italian word for love. I'll now play Chénier's comeback. Chénier's comeback roughly translates as, "You do not understand what love is. Love is a blessing from the heavens that's not to be tossed about lightly, for the driving force of the cosmos is love." Carrera sang the first high note with vigor, and he flaunted his vocal horsepower by suspending the second high note, the note I believe to be the final one in that musical number. His rendition of the aria truly deserves its minute-long applause, especially for the way he was able to rise to the occasion of ending it well. Chénier's comeback shames Maddalena into apologizing. In giving that recital, Chénier has worked himself up so much, he's now barely able to get a grip on himself. He excuses himself. The Improvviso is truly a tremendous musical number when even the character giving it is so shaken by it. To the Contessa di Quagni's party, it is a mere wet blanket. Little does she know that that is a child's blanket compared to what awaits her.